In this video, I'd like to show you some of the ways that you can deal with edge banding in CabWriter. And in particular, I want to show you a new feature that we just added for CabWriter 3. So you can see here I have a simple frameless set of cabinets with flat panel doors and drawer fronts, which is typically where we would want to automatically do some compensation for edge banding. So if we look at our parameters here on the Cutlist tab, we've added a new parameter here called slab door and drawer undersizing. And you can put in your edge banding thickness and CabWriter will automatically compensate for the edge banding on the Cutlist. So it doesn't draw the edge banding in, as you can see. It draws the doors and drawer fronts full size. But where you'll see it is on the Cutlist, but also we can see it here under the Extended Entity Info window. This window, if you're not familiar with it, shows you information on the part. In particular, it tells you the material type and name, and any oversizing or undersizing that might be applied to that part. Now I can manually apply undersizing or oversizing to any part I want by simply typing into these boxes, but CabWriter has a lot of capability for doing that for you as well. So in this case, we've resized the width and the length of this part each by 1/4 of an inch, which makes sense because we had our edge banding set to 1/8 of an inch, so 1/8 on top and bottom is 1/4, a negative 1/4. Because we want to make the part smaller, and same with the width. Now I also have the thickness being resized by 1/16 of an inch. That is right here. Where is that? Door and drawer oversizing. So the thickness would be 1/16 of an inch. And that might be because you want to sand the door after you put edge banding on. So you can always zero that out if you don't want that. But here's where I can always check any given part. I can see my carcass side has no oversizing or undersizing at all because I had that all set to 0. But where do we see this show up? In the Cutlist. So once I do my production documentation, I'm going to do a Cutlist plus Cutlist, and I'm also going to do a spreadsheet compatible Cutlist. Create those reports. Alright, so it says it's done. So if I go look at the Cutlist, here's the spreadsheet compatible one, the CSV file, and then the CWX file is the Cutlist plus compatible one, which I'll show you in a little bit. If we just look at the spreadsheet compatible one, we'll get to see something here. So let me go look at one of these parts. So this one here is, I look in the Extended Entity Info window now, CabWriter has filled in the component number or the part number. So C131, C131 is right here. I highlight that. There's two sets of dimension columns. This one here is after any width, length, or thickness compensation, and this is the final, basically, the as drawn. If we look at this one, the as drawn is 21 and 21/32 in length and 10 inches in width. So if I look over here, the width is 9 3/4. That's a 1/4 inch less, the 1/8 and the 1/8. And over here it's 8/32 less, which is also a 1/4 of an inch. And if you'll see here, the extra 1/16 is added to this column. It's 3/4 of an inch thick final, but since we added a 1/16 of an inch in the Extended Entity Info window, it ended up right here. So that's one way that you can do it automatically. The same with if you wanted to add some thinner edge banding on these carcass sides, I could do that two ways. I could select all the carcass sides and I could manually put that dimension in here. Or on the cut list for carcass side width, I could say minus 1/16 of an inch if I wanted, and that would, when I redrew this cabinet, I would get negative 1/16 of an inch on the resize, which would show up in the cut list. Now, this cabinet, this end panel here, end sheet, unfortunately that's one we don't have an automatic resizing on length and width right at this moment. But if you'll notice, it did get an oversizing by 1/2 an inch. Where did that come from? On the project tab we have scribe allowance of 1/2 an inch as our default. So because this panel goes to the wall, CABWriter is adding an extra 1/2 an inch on for the cut list. And but what if I wanted to add edge banding to this now? I would want it only oversized by 3/8 of an inch, so that when I added that other 1/8 of an inch on, it would be 1/2. So I can just select this part and manually change this to 3/8 of an inch. And when I rerun my production reports, it would show up 3/8 of an inch smaller on the cut list instead of 1/2 an inch. So I can do this as a combination of manual. I can override one on a case-by-case basis in the extended entity info window. Now, unfortunately, at this time, this stuff only, these over and undersizing only shows up on the cut list, not on the DXF files. That's something that we're going to look at for an upcoming release of CABWriter, so that these under and oversizing transfers to the DXF file if you're cutting this out via CNC. Then you'll be able to do that automatically. But so watch for that upcoming in a upcoming release. So that's the basic of how you can do it from within CABWriter and have it propagate to the cut list. There's another thing you can do if you've got Cutlist Plus, for example. That's what this file is, and if I open Cutlist Plus with this file, all that same information is in this cut list. If we look at what part were we looking at? We were looking at C1-31. If we look at that in the Cutlist Plus file, C1-31 is right. Where is C1-31? Oh, right here. Same thing. We've got our 10 inches and we've got our 9 3/4. But there's another function in Cutlist Plus. If you go to View, Parts Details Editor, you'll see this little thing shows up down here. And the way that works is if I look at my end sheet, it's right now oversized by 1/2 an inch. Basically what this function does down here is it lets you apply edge banding to the parts. So I could use, if I look at my settings here, it allows me to pull, it's got some in the materials, the raw materials tab, I've set up some edge banding. Here's some maple solid that is 1/8 of an inch thick, and I'll use that as my primary and only edge banding. I can have primary and secondary. And I'm not going to go into how to set all this up. You can look at the help menu in Cutlist Plus. But if I do that, and if I look at my preferences, it has different ways that you can shorthand which edges are being done. Right now I've got width edges and length edges. So this example here says 1 width edge and 2 length edges would be edge banded. I'll show you how that works here in a sec. There's some other ones that you can dig into if you're interested. If I take this part and I do it on the front, what it what it does is it changes in the banding column here. 0W-1L. 0 width edges and 1 length edge we've got. So if I did 1 width edge, now we got 1W, 1L, and here's 1W, 2L. And but now I gotta apply one of my edge bandings here, and I'm going to use primary edge banding. My primary edge banding is set to the 1/8 of an inch. So what that did is it's now showing me the finished size after edge banding is my original size, 24.5 by 30 3/4, but before banding, 24.25 by 30 5/8. Here's one edge banding and here's two. So where that shows up is on the layouts. And if I go to the layouts, go back here, it's going to tell me which layout this is on, A1. If I go look at A1, which is right here, it's showing me this part. And it's giving me the cut numbers to cut to after the edge banding's been subtracted. And it shows me which edges. So it did that all automatically for me, so you can have your layouts show you which parts and which edges and what to cut it to. How does this relate back to CAB Well, this column here, the banding column, notice it always said none because we didn't have anything set up in CAB but see this 1W, 2L notation. If I'm going to switch this back, turn all these off. Now we're back to none, right? So if I go back to CAB choose this part, open the extended entity info window, and in the banding type 1W-1L. And if we rerun our production documentation, first I'm going to close that window in Cutlist Plus. Don't save the changes. Go back here, rerun production documentation, create reports, same reports that I did before. All right, now we go and open our Cutlist Plus one. You will see when we look at where's C1-34? C1-34 not showing up this time. Is that what our number was? Let me go look. Extended entity info, C1-34. And actually I should have this back to 1/2 an inch so that it'll do the banding resize for us. And I really just want 0 length and 1 width. So let me save this file. And let me run the production documentation one more time. And, okay, I'm gonna close this. No, didn't need to do that. All right, now let me go open this up and see. All right. So C1-34 here has the 1W-0L that we put in back in CabWriter. And you can see this is pre-selected with our primary. I haven't selected a primary yet. You got to go into the preferences, the settings, because this is a new file. So I just set my primary to that. You can see it showed up here, and then it made that adjustment. And if I go to my layouts, you can see that it's showing that edge banding here, and it's showing me the adjusted size. So that is the other way you can handle it. If you have Cutlist Plus, you can go in and select all the parts that you want to edge band a certain way, and you can put that code in there. So either or works, but those are the facilities that we have in here for edge banding right now with CabWriter. So hopefully you can take advantage of them. Thanks.